Good evening, I'm Klaudia Czerwińska and you're watching World News Tonight live from Warsaw. As Kyiv is among a number of places that suffered heavy losses during last night's Russian aerial attack, Germany has pledged a major financial package to boost Ukraine's war effort as Europe struggles to agree on the use of frozen Russian assets. More on that in just a moment, but first, more on today's top stories.
The goal is to defend every centimeter of every territory of NATO countries.
Dacian Fall military drills come to an end in Romania. TVP World's Alex Cadier has the details.
We are one of the main transport corridors into Ukraine.
Poland prepares to be part of Ukraine's post-war reconstruction effort.
Poland will definitely win. This is my hope, and Lewandowski will score a goal, I think.
And Warsaw hosts a World Cup qualifier this evening. Poland takes on the Netherlands. This could easily be the biggest financial commitment to Ukraine's war effort on behalf of an EU member state since the start of the full-scale invasion. In the latest show of solidarity, Germany will provide Ukraine with 11.5 billion euros in 2026. But that's not all. Germany's defense minister also announced the transfer of an additional 150 million euros in US arms to Ukraine at the meeting of the Group of Five. All this while EU member states struggle to agree on a 140 billion euro reparations loan for the country at war. Kazimierz Łysiak reports.
More US Patriot missiles will be heading to Ukraine thanks to Germany. The German defense minister announced a new aid package for Kyiv at the meeting of the Group of Five: Germany, Poland, the UK, Italy and France.
I was in contact with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte yesterday, and we agreed to participate in a further package worth at least 150 million euros.
150 million euros can barely cover 40 Patriot missiles. It's not much in the context of the hundreds of drones and missiles Russia is throwing at Ukraine every day. But some analysts say there is more to it than meets the eye.
Germany just ramping up its assistance is, of course, an important signal towards all the other member states to also do more.
And that's especially evident given the country's revised budget for 2026, officially unveiled on Friday. It includes the largest financial aid for Ukraine since the start of the war, at 11.5 billion euros. That's 3 billion more than initially planned.
I think very welcome news at a time that doesn't look so good for Ukraine as in the last 3 weeks. So this is really an important step. I think Germany is stepping up to the plate.
The announcement comes as the EU is struggling to reach consensus on using the 140 billion euros of Russian frozen assets as additional financial boost for Kyiv. A boost which could prove vital for Ukraine's defense against Russia in 2026. Especially since the United States stopped outright donating aid to Ukraine under President Donald Trump.
We're having a very intense discussion about the use of the assets. My proposal is currently being examined by the EU Commission. We are also in constant talks with various member states in the European Union to see whether we can go down this path together.
The main obstacle is Belgium, as Russian frozen assets are mainly stored in Belgian banks. Brussels is concerned it may be left hung out to dry if Russia comes knocking after the war, demanding the return of these assets in court. While the EU is scrambling to find sufficient guarantees for Belgium, Germany has just provided a much-needed lifeline for Ukraine. For TVP World, I'm Kazimierz Łysiak.
Another night brought about another deadly aerial attack on Ukraine by Russia. Hundreds of drones and multiple missiles rained down on the Ukrainian capital, killing at least 6 people and injuring at least 29 others. A wicked attack is how President Volodymyr Zelenskyy summed up last night's barrage. It's time to go live to our correspondent in Kyiv, Oz Karaji, who has the latest. Good evening, Oz. So do you think that this major attack might come as Russians feel somewhat emboldened after recent developments in Pokrovsk?
Well, look, the fighting is still ongoing in Pokrovsk, a very difficult situation for the Ukrainians. But really, this fits Russia's pattern of targeting Ukrainian civilian infrastructure, and particularly during the winter months, targeting energy facilities. Now, 6 people dead, 29 injured, as 11 residential buildings, multi-story residential buildings in Kyiv were targeted in the barrage. That's according to Mayor Vitaly Klitschko, the mayor of Kyiv. President Zelenskyy said that Russia launched 430 drones and 18 missiles of various types at Ukraine in this attack. But look, another attack on energy infrastructure. I'm right now stood right in the center of Kyiv. As you can see around me, there are no street lights on at the moment, and there is the very loud din of generators as they are powering all of these shop lights that you see around me are all being powered by generators. So another attack, not just on civilians paying the price, but also again on the energy infrastructure as we head towards yet another bitter Eastern European winter. Now, the new acting energy minister has spoken to TVP World today. Let's take a listen to what he had to say about these recent attacks.
The enemy is deliberately targeting energy facilities. The enemy's objective is clear. Since the heating season has already begun, the enemy is attempting to destabilize the operation of the unified energy system, both its generation and electricity distribution components, and is also specifically targeting facilities essential for heat supply. In other words, we see that the enemy's goal is, in fact, social destabilization.
So this news from Germany about further assistance on air support is going to be very welcome here in Kyiv. But look, as you can see around me, the situation is difficult heading into winter, and they're going to need a lot more in the way of support than what Germany is offering. So really the question is towards the Europeans and the Americans, if they can really help give Ukraine the support it needs to deal with this bitter winter as Russia continues to strike civilian infrastructure and particularly the civilian power grids. Back to you in the studio.
Thank you so much, Oz. This was Oz Kataji reporting live from Kyiv. And we continue. Team Poland for Ukraine, a newly formed Polish consortium of development institutions, could become one of the major players in Ukraine's reconstruction effort after the war is over. Poland, considering close proximity and extensive transport links with neighboring Ukraine, could have an important role in the future of the country. And as a third of Polish companies consider investing in Ukraine already, some, like WB Electronics, have already established their position. Maciej Wilowski reports.
Polish companies could be ideally positioned to invest in Ukraine and take part in the country's reconstruction after the war ends. That's the focus of a newly formed consortium of Polish development institutions called Team Poland for Ukraine, which includes organizations like the Polish Development Fund and the National Development Bank.
What we created is Team Poland, and that's the initiative that's there to support Polish companies to, on one hand, provide support to the process of rebuilding Ukraine, but at the same time, we just want them to be present in that market.
Given the close proximity and extensive transport links between the two countries, Polish companies could have a unique competitive advantage in the Ukrainian market.
We have a very good understanding of the Ukrainian market because of the proximity of sort of language similarities, but at the same time, we are sort of the transport and logistic hub for rebuilding Ukraine because we are one of the main transport corridors into Ukraine.
Roughly 90% of all military equipment bound for Ukraine goes through Poland, and these transport links could play a pivotal role in post-war reconstruction. According to a study last year by Warsaw-based consultancy Atlantic Contract, nearly a third of Polish firms had considered investing in Ukraine, even amid the ongoing war. Some Polish companies, like defense contractor WB Electronics, have had an active presence in Ukraine for over a decade.
The presence of the WG Group on the Ukrainian market is not something new. In 2014, the first contracts for the delivery of fly-eye systems were signed. These are mini-class unmanned aerial reconnaissance systems. They have been operating in Ukraine since 2015, as that is when the first fly-eye deliveries took place.
It's been an even longer longer presence for Polish rail producer PESA.
PESA, as the biggest Polish rail producer, has been working with Ukrainian partners for over 25 years. We have delivered hundreds of passenger wagons and some special trains.
Examples like these highlight that future Polish investments in Ukraine could become highly successful once the fighting stops. Maciej Wilowski for TVP World.
The new Czech government might be making changes, but that doesn't apply to all of the decisions made by the previous administration. Leader of the ANO party and the incoming Prime Minister Andrej Babiš confirmed that the purchase of F-35 fighter jets will come through. Despite campaigning to cut expensive military purchases during parliamentary elections in October, the victorious ANO party will honor the deal made by the outgoing government worth billions. Our correspondent in the Czech Republic, Andrew Sweeney, has the latest.
The new Czech government will honour a deal made by its predecessor to buy 24 F-35 fighter jets from the United States, a deal worth around €6 billion. That's according to one of its leading MPs.
During parliamentary elections in October, the ANO party, led by Andrej Babiš, which won a plurality of votes, campaigned on reducing expensive military purchases. It is now joined in a coalition government with the far-right SPD party, which has consistently campaigned on cutting defence spending and has long supported a withdrawal from NATO. However, according to Karel Havlicek, an MP and vice chairman of the ANO party, the F-35 deal is a fait accompli that the Czech Republic must honour.
The decision has been made about the F-35. At this point, let's not discuss what could have been done better. The Czech Republic has an obligation to the United States, and obligations must be fulfilled.
The acquisition of the 24 F-35 fighter jets was approved by the Czech Republic's previous government, led by Petr Fiala's ODS party, in September 2023. ANO, then in opposition, repeatedly criticised the deal. The F-35s will replace the Czech Air Force fleet of Swedish-made Saab JAS-39 Gripen fighters. By contrast, the Hungarian Air Force has elected to increase its Saab Gripen fleet.
The F-35 is a stronger equipment technology than the current version of the Saab Gripen.
In September this year, the Czech Defence Ministry also placed an order for 44 Leopard 288 tanks worth around €1.8 billion. The tanks are reported to arrive in 2028 at the earliest. The first of the F-35 fighter jets should arrive in 2029, with the last expected in 2035.
The ANO party's nominee for Finance Minister Alena Skelerova has said the Czech Republic will only spend 2% of its GDP on defence, well short of the 5% sought by President Donald Trump. For TVP World, Andrew Sweeney.
As there seems to be no end in sight to the war Russia waged against Ukraine and the dwindling U.S. military presence in Europe grows more concerning than ever, thousands of forces from across Europe gathered in Romania to conduct the Dacian Fall, a drill designed to practice NATO's response in case of an attack. Alex Cadier takes us into the very heart of action as he followed the drills in Romania.
NATO is getting ready for an attack on its eastern flank. Led by the French armed forces, 5,000 troops from 10 countries training together to counter an attack on Romania.
The goal is to defend every centimeter of every territory of NATO countries, and we're organizing for this. But it's only defensive. These plans are in case of a confirmed attack by an enemy, of course.
Behind the scenes here, officials were crystal clear. They're preparing for more Russian aggression in Europe. Spain, Belgium, Portugal, Poland, Romania and others all took part to practice what a common NATO response would be to an attack in Europe. The first challenge was testing how quickly military equipment, including these French Leclerc tanks, could get to the eastern flank.
Understandably, we're in peacetime, so our journey was slowed by administrative procedures, because our military trains did not get priority to cross borders, so they waited 1 or 2 days. In wartime, things would have gone more easily.
Military officials said the drill was a success, but some questions remain about these forces' ability to fight a Ukraine-style war with Russia. While the Eurofighter Typhoon jets took off, the Romanian F-16s that were meant to take part couldn't fly because of bad weather. Having taken over the battlefield in Ukraine, FPV drones were but a small sideshow during this drill, which on the face of it stayed very similar to previous NATO exercises of this kind. Counter-drone technology was on show. In the last couple of months, this armoured vehicle was fitted with a new grenade launcher designed to shoot down drones and controlled by an operator inside. But even its crew says its capabilities would be limited in battle. They say they haven't trained enough, targeting high-speed drones is done manually, and the vehicle can only fire when stationary. But officials told me that focusing too much on the lessons from Ukraine risks missing the point of European defence. Well, senior French military officials I've been speaking to here behind the scenes say that it isn't just about the capacity to shoot down drones were Russia to attack, because NATO is not Ukraine. They have far more capabilities, and therefore any attack on the defensive alliance would meet a broader, much more far-reaching response against any adversary. They say NATO is ready to defend itself at any time. Alex Cadier in Chincu, Romania for TVP World.
This was quite an eventful first day in office for the new U.S. ambassador to Poland, Tom Rose. His unsavory comments about EU sustainability omnibus directive have ruffled some feathers as a diplomat lambasted the initiative, claiming it's going to bring an end to American businesses in Europe. However, after some convincing from Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk, he backed out from his earlier statements. Natalia Komarow has more on the unfortunate statement and a dynamic Volta in her latest report.
It was Thomas Rose's first day on the job as U.S. ambassador to Poland, and he already managed to cause a stir. Washington's new envoy in Warsaw took to X to weigh in on the Sustainability Omnibus Directive approved by the European Parliament on Thursday.
If this growth and investment killing bill becomes law, the damage to American investment across Europe will be staggering. It would impose unprecedented reporting burdens, exposes companies to crippling liabilities, and empower Brussels to micromanage even more supply chains, balance sheets, and investment decisions. Make no mistake, President Trump is watching.
This came as MEPs from Poland's two biggest parties, the ruling Civic Coalition and the opposition Law and Justice, celebrated rare bipartisan support for the new omnibus, designed to simplify green reporting rules for small and medium companies across Europe.
We have a strong commitment to our simplification agenda. The idea is to reduce red tape for our companies. It is a request that came from our companies and our member states themselves.
Some Polish lawmakers took the ambassador's post on X as an attempt by Washington to influence Warsaw's policies.
Ambassador, Poland will pursue its own interest and European interest, not those of American businesses. For the benefit of our relationship, it's worth keeping in mind that alliances are not about one side dictating how the other should conduct its politics.
But according to Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk, the new ambassador simply made a mistake.
Most likely, the ambassador was mistaken about the directive. Thanks to the Polish EU presidency, the new so-called omnibus was created to deregulate EU regulations, so to lessen, not increase, the bureaucratic burden.
In the end, Ambassador Rose conceded.
Poland's demand for less bureaucracy and fewer burdensome regulations from Brussels is a demand for more innovation, more prosperity, and more growth in Poland and Europe. The United States stands proudly with Poland as it continues to lead Europe to a more prosperous and competitive future.
For TVP World, Natalia Komarow.
Only minutes after we finish World News tonight, Poland will play the Netherlands in the 2026 World Cup qualifiers. The crucial game, set to take place at the National Stadium in Warsaw, has Polish football fans on the edge of their seats. So before you grab your popcorn and settle down to watch, here's what Piotr Miszczuk learned about the expectations ahead of tonight's game right at the Warsaw Stadium.
In some 30 minutes and in front of nearly 60,000 people, the Poland national football team, who sit in the second place, will come up against the Netherlands, the group leader in the 2026 World Cup qualifiers. The last time the two teams played against each other, Poland managed to secure a lucky draw. But this time around, the Polish fans are whetting their appetite for more.
At least 2-0.
Poland will definitely win. This is my hope, and Lewandowski will score a goal, I think.
Poland will win 2-1, with goals from Matty Cash and Robert Lewandowski.
Despite several significant absences, Poland will have Matty Cash, who scored the goal in the last clash between the two teams, and most importantly, captain Robert Lewandowski, who is also Poland's all-time top scorer. A couple of days ago, Cristiano Ronaldo announced that this coming World Cup will be his last. At 37, Robert Lewandowski might be playing one of his last games for Poland, but the future remains uncertain.
That decision, my future, I'm not able to answer right now. I myself don't know what I will want to do in a few weeks or months, or where I will be.
If Poland win against the Netherlands and Malta in the last two games of the qualifiers, and the Netherlands, in a very unlikely scenario, draws or loses to Lithuania, Poland will get a direct qualification to the World Cup. But in a more likely scenario, Poland will get to the playoffs, and winning against the Netherlands will get Poland a much easier opponent. From outside the National Stadium in Warsaw, I'm Piotr Miszczuk.
And as we spoke extensively about the new record-breaking German support package for Ukraine earlier in the show, it's time to revisit that subject. Joining me now from our studio in Brussels is Marcin Burzański, Director at the Center for Diplomacy and Negotiation, Collegium Civitas. Good evening, and thank you for joining me on the show.
Good evening. A pleasure to be with you here.
Absolute pleasure. We know that the E5 meeting in Berlin took place on Friday, so let's have a listen to Kaja Kallas, the EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, who had this to say.
Ukraine will need more funding next year. There are several options, but using immobilized Russian assets is the most clear-cut way to sustain Ukraine's defense. It is also the way to show Russia that time is not on their side. Supporting Ukraine is a bargain compared to the cost of Russia's victory.
So that was Kaja Kallas talking again about the importance of using frozen Russian assets to fund Ukraine. Yet another time we have this conversation. Is there any chance that at this point the EU will finally decide to make use of those Russian assets and dig into them?
Well, this is not a simple decision. I think we're seeing incremental steps to crossing that line and awarding those frozen assets to Ukraine, or rather, based on those assets, giving Ukraine a loan which will be then connected to potential reparations that would be given in the future by Russia, or should be given by Russia. It's a complicated matter because this is Russian sovereign money, of course, but the case is overwhelmingly strong to use those assets, and I think it is gaining momentum. There was hope that already at the most recent European Council summit, the decision would be taken. This hasn't happened yet, but there's a lot of push to have this decision taken this year. There's support from Washington to do this, which wasn't in place before. So I think hopefully this decision will come to life, because those funds are needed for Ukraine, and they're, in my opinion, the most fair and best way to raise those additional resources to help Ukraine continue with fighting the war effort, to help Ukraine reconstruct the damages from Russian invasion.
Do you think that there are more and more conversations about those frozen Russian assets and how to fund Ukraine and its war effort is actually a signal of the EU thinking, well, maybe we need to put more money into our own safety and security, considering the situation, especially when it comes to our eastern flank, and a possible lessening of U.S. military presence on the continent? Do you think that there is somewhat a connection when it comes to this discussion about the frozen Russian assets?
Certainly. Europe has to invest in its own defenses. They've been underinvested for many, many years. Unprecedented decisions have been made in the last 6 months during Polish presidency, and now continued under the Danish presidency, in funding Europe's defenses, the SAFE package, the Readiness 2030 vision. This is all very good, but of course needs to be financed. So European countries which are already going far into their coffers, bringing on additional debt to find the package which has been put on the scales of up to 600 billion euro. Of course, we need to find in that package also ways to support Ukraine. And here, those additional assets, the 140 billion estimated, that's in Euroclear here in Belgium, that would certainly tip the scale in Ukraine's favor quite strongly, at least for a year or two and allow more sustainable support, which is critical considering, of course, the stance of the United States. Now, that is not to say that efforts shouldn't at the same time be done on the diplomatic side on trying to find a resolution towards a ceasefire. But I think Europe is saying very, very clearly, this will not happen until we exert real pressure on Russia, and real pressure on Russia is exerted through military achievements, through the fighting of Ukraine army, Ukraine defense forces, and for that, of course, the funds are needed desperately, as well as for reconstructing Ukraine, because there's continued bombing of civilian infrastructure. Just last night, we've seen Kyiv attacked ruthlessly with drones hitting residential buildings, with rockets falling on the city. And this is Ukraine's daily situation. So, of course, this reconstruction also needs to keep happening. Now we're also going towards the winter, which means that there will be more attacks from Russia in the energy infrastructure. We've seen this before, in the years before. So there needs to be also preparedness for this and quick actions to protect this key energy infrastructures for Ukraine. Now, all of this, of course, costs, and those funds need to be identified and found somewhere, and the burden of this, of course, lies with Ukraine European allies. So it's good to see those discussions happening today in Berlin. Hopefully we will see that there will be momentum, continued momentum, that towards the end of the year, finally the decision can be made to use those Russian assets.
We've also heard from German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, who, according to his words, had an extensive phone conversation with Volodymyr Zelenskyy. And we've heard from him saying that he needed to ensure that the young men from Ukraine do not come to Germany in large numbers, that President Zelenskyy will have to make sure of that. Do you think that Germany is potentially feeling some sort of a discomfort, or they're having another migratory issue when they look at the situation which is currently taking place? Why do you think he said that, and why did this conversation take place?
I think it is a combination of factors. First of all, it's a very difficult political subject in Ukraine, but there is an ongoing pressure on President Zelenskyy, on the political class, to move the age limit, to lower the age limit for recruits to the army, because Ukraine is dramatically understaffed when it comes to their armed forces fighting in the front lines. And the forces which are on the front lines are really exhausted. They need a change. It is, of course, an extremely difficult politically decision to be undertaken by President Zelenskyy to lower that age, but there is pressure for that to happen. So these words could be part of it. Then also recently, in order to gain political points, President Zelenskyy allowed those younger men to exit the country. And this is, of course, causing them to move towards the west, to come to Germany, which is more of a concern, I think, politically. Not that much that there's a migratory wave. These are not that many people, but the very fact that this could be used politically by the right-wing parties, by AfD in Germany and others who have a pretty strong standing and put political pressure on Merz and his administration to showcase that the war is not the war support is not working, that we're seeing another migratory wave. This is difficult for Merz, and he's also putting pressure on Zelenskyy to help him resolve that kind of situation.
I'm aware that our time is coming to an end, so very briefly, do you think that President Zelenskyy is actually going to respond to this call?
Well, of course, he's going to connect with it. He's going to look at solutions. I think down the line, the Ukraine will need to find a way to engage more of the younger people. Perhaps there'll be some limits. Perhaps they'll check more. Maybe lower the age a little bit. Maybe there'll be more of a scheme put in place with some additional incentives. It's hard to say. President Zelenskyy is also in a difficult political spot at the moment, so he will not risk opening a new political frontline battle. He has to really do a big shakeup right now within his administration. Of course, we all know the issue with the recent corruption charges that emerged among some of his closest allies. So this needs to be tackled. He's got a parliament that is still divided about a potential future election. And of course, he's got to prepare for the winter. So while this is important, I think it's most critical when it comes to what can be delivered in terms of Ukrainian young recruits to the front lines, which is really, really critical. And everything else should really be tailored to that. Hopefully, President Zelenskyy will be in enough strong political spot to make some tough decisions here.
Thank you very much. Marcin Burzański, Director at the Center for Diplomacy and Negotiation from Collegium Civitas, was my guest. Thank you for joining.
Thank you very much.
And so this would be all for now here on World News Tonight. I'm Klaudia Czerwińska. Thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you back here on TVP World for more news and features in just a moment. Good night.